Hello, everybody. I am so delighted you could join us for this panel discussion. Today, we're going to be talking about smart urban solutions for a sustainable Singapore. What does sustainability actually even mean? I think for somebody like me, it just means how do I use resources in a responsible way so that I don't overuse what I have so that my future generations will still be able to have what they should be having. Joining me today is a wonderful esteemed panel. I have 4 panelists, and you'll see that each of them represent leaders in their respective spaces, and they are living how to be sustainable, not just at their work, but also in their individual lives. So you know that living in Singapore, we are hot, humid, and very, very dense. And the wonderful thing is that all of these panelists are bringing solutions to you. So today we're going to be asking them some easy and difficult questions about how their solutions are going to be impacting Singapore. So before we go into the panel sessions, I'd like to introduce these wonderful panelists. So first, we have Ms. Amanda Khoo. She's the director at Nippo International. And through her sharing later, you'll find that there are going to be many solutions that you may not know that are being used by you every day that is generated by her company. Second, we have Dr. Kelvin Lee. Kelvin is the Senior Technical Manager at Semwo Innovation Center. Again, if you've ever been to the F1 session, you'll know that the roads that have these fast cars going over are paved with material from his company. And he's going to tell you more about the innovations that he's doing. And third, we have Professor Lee Po Sing. Po Sing is an associate professor at the National University of Singapore. He's also the director of the NUS Center for Energy Research and Technology, as well as the director for Coolest SG. So you can tell he is a leader in the space of cooling using less energy in Singapore. He's going to tell you more about that later on. And finally, we have Will Temple, the CEO and co-founder of Ampotech. You see through the discussion and questions that we'll do later that we have innovations that are impacting us every day.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amanda. I'm from Nippo International Private Limited. A quick summary of what we do. I think it's more interesting to introduce our company rather than myself. Quite boring person, but the company, I think we've been around since 1980, 41 years. Predominantly in the manufacturing for the construction industries, we do OEM, ODM for all the big global brands in the market. We adopt an open innovation approach towards R&D, what we do for R&D, new projects and things like that. We work a lot with A-Star and the Institute of Higher Learnings, universities like NTU and NUS. And then through IPI, we also get in touch with various polytechnics and basically look at new projects they are doing and if it's applicable to what we like or what our customers are looking for, we then undertake that project. We also nurture and incubate new startups. One such startup is A&T, whereby we focus on recycling waste carbon black from the waste tire pyrolysis process. Another spin-off, very recent because of the COVID situation, a new spin-off from A-Star, LCX Private Limited. It focused a lot on hand sanitizers and also a baby blanket, a project that we did with NUS and KK Hospital, a project that we did through the NRF finance. Okay, in a nutshell, what we do, some 4-5 pillars of what we do. A lot of it is in the client-based business, whereby it's basically an OEM, ODM business. Okay, how do we go upon this open innovation approach? We talk to brand owners and authorities in the industry, and then taking what they need or what they are looking for, we approach the research institutes. And if we like what the research institutes have, we put money in there, we develop the project, we find beta sites, and then we put it back in the market. So basically, that's what we do. In a quick milestone, this is what the company does. Since 1980, we have been into R&D very much, but we are more focused in R&D in the last 20 years. A lot of tee-up, I kept one yeah, a lot of such projects with the research institute. So that's basically sums up what we do as a company.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelvin, and I'm the Senior Technical Manager at Multi Innovation Center. Thank you for inviting me to share Samvo's sustainability journey. So a bit of introduction about myself. I've been with the company for over 15 years, and I lead the technical as well department as well as the research at Samvo. So without further ado, let me begin with the presentation. So this slide gives you an overview of what does Samvo do. So we started in 1975 as a transport and logistics company. Also over the years, Samvo has ventured into road construction as well as material supply. So we also invested in our own research center, and we have also invested heavily in digitalization to improve our construction productivity. So in recent years, we have also ventured overseas in Asia as well as Europe. So our businesses can be grouped into 5 areas. One is civil and infrastructure construction, which include bridges, highways, airports, pavements, etc. Asphalt, this refers to more commonly known as thematic, which is the black material that we use to pave the roads. So we are a major supplier of asphalt. Building materials, we also supply great aggregates and stones from our own quarries in Indonesia and Malaysia. So all these are imported to Singapore for our construction applications. Ready-mix concrete, this is mainly used for buildings as well as infrastructure construction. Last but not least, of course, is recycling, which I will talk a bit more later in the next few slides. And last but not least, I also like to stress that all these businesses are supported by our research and development. This kind of provides a competitive edge compared to our competitors. And we have our own Samvo Innovation Center. This is where we carry out research. So over the years, we have developed many types of sustainable as well as green construction materials. Our center is also accredited by the Singapore Accreditation Council, and we also provide pavement consultancy services for road agencies or even airport agencies to maintain their road pavements. So over the years, we have actually collaborated with many partners, including government agencies, professional bodies, as well as educational institutions to develop projects or to conduct joint research projects in various areas. So for the past 10 years, we have actually received over $10 million of research funding. And we have also developed more than 20 products, and we also actively share our findings in conferences as well as technical journals. So we have been actively involved in the recycling of waste materials to turn them into usable materials as an alternative to natural materials for the construction industry. For example, things like construction waste, which is obtained during the demolition of buildings, we can actually convert it into a material that we can use back for construction. Incinerator bottom ash, this refers to the ash that is derived after the incineration of our refuse waste. This is something that we are also looking into. And of course, plastic waste. Currently, I think this is something which is a big problem, especially in not just in Singapore, but the entire world is facing. We are also looking into ways to recycle this plastic potentially for road construction. And just to highlight one of the key upcoming innovation, which is our Samvo Smart Hub. This is said to be the first positive industrial building in Singapore. We use state-of-the-art technologies to harness energy. using solar panels, and the energy that is being captured is more than what the required usage. That's why it's rated as a positive energy building, and it was also awarded the BCA Green Mark Platinum Award. And this building is slated to be completed by next year. With that, I thank you for your kind attention.
A very good morning to all. Thank you for inviting me to be in this panel discussion. So for the self-introduction, I'd like to introduce an initiative that I'm involved with. It's actually the Cooling Energy Science and Technology Singapore, Coolest SG consortium, which is actually funded by our National Research Foundation, NRF. So on the cover side, you can see the members, the industry members that Coolest SG currently has. So it includes companies like NG, Capital Land, as well as Vertiv. Okay, so let me run you through the objectives for starting Coolest SG. So Coolest SG is meant to be a synergistic platform to accelerate cooling integrated design and technology development, and to promote technology transfer by bridging the gap to commercialization. So why we think this is important is because while there are a lot of wonderful R&D work done here in Singapore, but in terms of the translation into commercial products and solutions can still be improved. So that's why we thought if we can create such a platform where we bring to the table all the relevant stakeholders, then we can actually jointly address various issues that affects the adoption of innovative cooling solution. So that's the motivation for setting up a Coolest SG. So in terms of the framework, right? We start by identifying industry relevant topics, and this is usually done by various industry engagement events, for example, like workshop seminars, so that the researchers are aware what are some of the pain points and challenges that our local industry actually face, so that they can then actually jointly identify the problem, a good problem to solve, as well as the innovative solutions that would actually adequately address these challenges and issues. And once they have actually craft out the research proposal, then we actually submit the proposal for funding consideration. Typically, you'll be actually co-funded by both our government agencies as well as the industry partners, right? So with the funding, then the research performers and now the industry partners will be able to jointly embark on the research, development, and demonstration projects, right? And followed by the test bedding of solutions in a live or the real world environment. Because oftentimes you find that a lot of the wonderful R&D work is actually done in a lab environment, right? Which is actually very well controlled. But this can actually deviate from the actual live environment. So that's why we are working very closely with both agencies as well as industry partners to actually test bed such solution in a real world environment. And with the test bedded results, then we will be able to commercialize solutions. And this is actually true by working again closely with agencies, industry partners, as well as the respective tech transfer officers. So the end game is really to develop and commercialize efficient cooling solutions, not only for Singapore, but for the greater ASEAN as well as Asia Pacific region. In terms of the focus, we are addressing a number of cooling domains, ranging from commercial buildings, residential buildings, data center, power plants, as well as manufacturing plants. So the next slide actually provide a list of potential focus areas, which we obtained through a number of industry roundtables. Just as mentioned, we want to be addressing areas or topics that are of relevance to the industry. So some of these topics or areas actually listed here. So I'll just let you run through them. So I think that is kind of a brief introduction for Coolest SG. So if you are interested to know more about consortium, please feel free to get in touch with me. I'll be more than glad to share some of the projects that are currently being undertaken between our research performers as well as our industry partners. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me and inviting me to join this panel. I'm Will Temple. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ampotech. So I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to introduce what we do as a business, and then hopefully that will set the stage for the rest of the discussion. In a nutshell, we're an IoT company. We develop products and analytics software to help homes and buildings monitor and manage their energy consumption. A little bit about our history. Our company was actually a spin-off from an A-star related research institute. We've been operating here in Singapore since 2015. We're a venture-backed company with a little over 1.3 million US in total funding. And today we have customers in a number of countries through resellers and distributors, and we process about 6 million energy data points a day from different types of buildings, different types of equipment. Just to give a little bit of a sense of what type of projects we do and how our products are used, we provide a wireless power monitoring device called the Ampo Hub, and then we provide a software platform that manages the devices and analyzes the data to detect anomalies and to detect faults with equipment. So these products have been used in a number of different industries, including office, sort of commercial real estate, retail, manufacturing, oil and gas, and convenience stores, many different types of buildings. But for us, it's really more about the asset, what it is that the customer wants to monitor, whether it's for energy efficiency or for facilities management applications. So if you're interested in speaking with us, please do feel free to get in touch with the team or get in touch over social media. I'm happy to answer questions if anyone has them, and I look forward to sharing our perspective with the other panelists.
So let's start today's panel with challenges. We know that we're facing new challenges in sustainability every day. We live in a hot and humid Singapore, and we know that new materials can make such a difference in how we live our lives. So perhaps let's start with this question of open innovation and how we can bring new solutions to solve some of these challenges. Perhaps can I ask Amanda to share some of her experiences bringing open innovations to generating new urban solutions for Singapore? Amanda.
Thanks for that question, Irene. Looking at new products, embarking on a new research project, it's always been challenging because where do you put your last dollar, when you want to move to a new project? Talking to the industry is important. Talking to your customers, to the authorities, these are a must-do activity. On top of that, because we are SME, we don't have the resource whereby we have the talent to look at every project and do that internally. So we have to reach out to research institutes like A-star, NUS, NTU, the Institute of Higher Learnings. And we're very lucky to have met IPI, where they also tie us in with the research institute overseas. So understanding what the customer wants on one hand, the authority, what they want on one hand, and finding the correct project that is suitable for us becomes a challenge. So that is one aspect of it, and then finally identifying a project, putting the money into it, and then following through the project for a few years. A lot of research takes years to develop, and then taking that and then like Posing says, putting it to commercialization. That's another huge challenge, and we find that a very big struggle for SMEs like ourselves. And so fortunately, with A-star's help, we're able to take what we have developed and find a way to launch that product into the market. So that's one area that I think the open innovation is really a whole process, and it's a very long journey, and the team needs to understand that, and then the industry needs to understand that too.
And are there specific examples you'd like to highlight that you have taken through this open innovation platform and you're working on right now?
Yeah, I mean, one of the projects that we did with A-star on the pigmented hollow glass bits for thermal control as a paint, as a coating. One of the things, we know the market is looking for such a product. So it's what we call a cool paint, right? Now, in developing this cool pane, we are able to bring the temperature down from anywhere between 8 to 23 degrees C, depending on how hot the weather is. So the highest we've recorded 23 degrees centigrade. Lowest on the rainy day is you get even up to 2 to 3 degrees C. Now, one big challenge is in commercialization is, a lot of people in the industry talk about using solar reflectance index as a measurement for cool pane. But when we did our research and we found out that SRI, solar reflectance index, doesn't mean anything above 80 is a good pane. I mean, if you look at in the market, a lot of cool pane achieve SRI of 82 to 85%. But their temperature cooling they are only able to achieve 2 to 5 degrees C. We have a gray colored pane that has a SRI of only about 40 degrees C, 40%, but it's achieved something in the range of 8 to 13 degrees C. So our question to the industry is SRI the correct way to measure a cool pane?
Okay, so you're setting new trends by asking the right questions about what we should be measuring.
Yeah.
So perhaps before we move on to PS, because he's all about cooling technologies, want to just reach out to Kelvin and ask him, because he's also done a lot of innovations through the Samoa Innovation Center. What are his views on open innovation and how that's a good or bad way of generating new solutions for sustainability? Kelvin.
Thank you. So Samoa or myself, we view open innovation as doing work together with our stakeholders, because ultimately that is the key concern that they have, and we are doing our part to contribute to the industry. So sustainable construction, I would say, is deeply rooted in Samoa's businesses. Why we want to do sustainable construction, you may ask, because in fact we started doing this for more than a decade. And 10 years ago, I would say consumers or even some agencies are not so concerned in terms of going green. So we started green business. In fact, we were operating in the rates as far as using recycled materials are concerned, because one of the key questions that they ask is normally, is a material cheaper than normal materials? And the second more challenging question is, has it been approved for usage? So these are technical challenges that we have to overcome. And back then, in fact, if you can still recall, in 2007, a crisis actually happened to Singapore where there was this aggregate disruption from Indonesia. And back then, in fact, I would say 90% of the aggregates come from Indonesia. That disruption actually kind of served like a wake-up call, in the sense that we shouldn't rely on other countries for all these materials that we are importing. That's where in fact, that crisis became an opportunity for us. So we started to, the agency started to look into recycled materials as a means to provide a substitute for natural stones, and that actually has been one of our most successful projects that we've undertaken over the years. So moving forward, in fact, we have also been actively looking into various projects to turn potential waste materials that we can effectively be used as alternative materials for construction.
Okay, thanks for that sharing. And so maybe turning our attention to PS, Amanda had mentioned this gray paint that they have and the fact that they are using a different metric to look at whether or not it's effective. What are your views on open innovation, working with industry, and how to bring about a sustainable Singapore through that?
Okay, sure. So I'll share about my personal journey in the area of data center cooling. So I think as researcher, we tend to focus on really pushing the performance, right? For example, getting the highest possible heat transfer coefficient, or they're getting the lowest junction temperature, right? In the case of like the chip cooling, right? Be it your GPU or your CPU. But the project that we concluded the end of March this year actually taught me something very valuable. You see, while you can claim whatever performance that you're able to achieve, right, in research paper, whatnot, but really to get the industry to adopt your solution, you first have to understand how things are being done in the industry. Right? Just to give an illustration, right? So typically when it comes to cooling in a data center, right? So cooling is actually more of an afterthought, right? So the IT folks will basically size up what is the capacity for their IT equipment, right? Then they'll just pass it to for example, M&E engineers, right, to come up with a cooling solution, right, and which they faithfully do, right? And most of the time, we will consider that it's a job well done. Okay? But what has not actually happened is actually the closing of the loop, because interestingly, power and cooling are actually coupled, right? So if let's suppose by the adoptions of high efficiency or high performance cooling solution, in fact, you can actually go back to actually reduce the power consumption for your IT equipment. But because of the segregation, right, between IT and facilities, so you will notice that nobody actually closed the loop. And so we actually spoke to probably more than 20 the data center operator, and interestingly, none of them is actually aware of that. And that actually led us to realize actually it's not so much about getting the best cooling solution, but rather sometimes it's actually more about breaking down the boundaries, right? So sometimes it's actually more to do with the business model, right? So we're now actually working closely with DC operators, hoping to really change the way that data center are being designed and operated. And hopefully, in doing so, we'll be able to not only to come up with better cooling solution, but also to substantially reduce the overall power consumption of the entire data center. So I think if we are able to do that, that would certainly lead to enhancing the sustainability of the whole data center industry.
Okay, that's really promising to hear that the university is working closely with industry, and that you're finding that it's not just about the technology that makes a difference. Sometimes it's a business model, and working in silos, that's a barrier to innovation really being more effective. So let's change tack a little bit. And I know that many of you have worked with many interesting technologies. And I think maybe for Will, given that you are a spin-off from A-Star, maybe I could direct this question to you about the impactful technology that you've been working on, and tell us more about what your company is doing and what Ampo Hub will be bringing to Singaporeans.
Sure, yeah, I'd love to share a little bit. You know, we have two sides of our business. We have a hardware side and we have sort of a data science side. And the reason that we do both is because we felt that using off-the-shelf sort of power metering products don't provide the type of data quality that we need to be able to do the kind of analytics that we want to do with different machines. So, you know, what we are actually working on right now, and we have some grant funding to support this, is we develop algorithms that can recognize what type of equipment is connected to an electrical panel. So oftentimes, if you go into an existing building, the documentation is not very good, the drawings may be out of date, or if you go into a plant room, for example, there's a lot of different equipment, and oftentimes it's not being monitored individually. So you don't get such a precise sense of whether it's operating efficiently or inefficiently, or for example, whether the motor is looking like it may fail within a certain period of time. So just using sort of the high frequency data that we collect from our devices and the models that we've developed, we're able to recognize that there are, you know, 2 pumps connected to this, you know, there's a number of refrigeration assets, there's a number of air conditioning units. And so this helps us deliver potentially a more cost-effective solution to customers. They don't have to invest in as much hardware or spend as much time on installation. And it also gives us, we think, sort of a foundation to do a lot of interesting longer-term work in, you know, machine health and motor current failure detection, predictive maintenance. So this is kind of the way that we're approaching it right now. Is you know, we do have a day-to-day business where we're doing sub-metering, we're helping businesses, you know, just gather data, because without data, you don't really have anything to manage a building with. But we are looking long-term and developing capabilities around the data science of what you can get out of that information as well.
Okay, and is this solution already available if Singaporeans wanted to implement this in their homes?
Well, yeah, it is available. Although at the moment we're not selling direct to consumer, so we're going through developers, we're going through other companies that can help us achieve a scale that's much more significant than selling direct one by one. And so we expect to have some announcements around that in 2021. So please stay tuned.
Okay. So we'll look forward to that. Thanks for sharing, Will. Maybe I'll turn back to Amanda, talking about technologies. Previously, when we had a quick chat, you mentioned that your company gets involved with so many different products, and you manufacture them for other companies. And I was so happy to hear that you work with HDB, and many of the waterproofing technologies that are being used in HDB flats are from your company. So
Yeah.
thank you that we have that technology from you. But perhaps, going on that trend about impactful technologies and impactful innovations for a sustainable Singapore, given that you've touched so many different types of products and you've innovated yourself and through your company, maybe share a little bit more about just the one that you think is so impactful and it really is something that people will be familiar with.
Looking at what we have done so far, if you look at what thermal shield is able to do, is reflecting a good part of the heat away from the building in a coating system, right? So if you look at the current situation with the COVID ongoing and the shortage of manpower, you realize that having a system that to reflect heat on its own is nice to have, but it only has one property. So one of the things that we are looking to incorporate is not just having a coating that has got thermal insulation properties, but it will incorporate that with a waterproofing system. So basically you have two properties into one coating, right? So that becomes what we produce in what we call the thermal shield coating in the market. Now, a lot of time, very often, if you look at cool paint with a SRI of about 80%, you get this 20% of the residual heat that's going to come into your building. Inevitable. Now, another project that we're undertaking with A-Star, if you look at it, is what we call the work in progress, whereby we actually use PCM, phase change material, and using the PCM as a heat sink and incorporating that into a skim coat. Now you wonder why skim coat, right? Now for PCM to work, you need a certain volume, a certain mass, right? And although we can incorporate it into coatings and what have you in the market, it has got a lot of limitations because most coatings comes up to about 1 to 2 mm thickness. It's insufficient for PCM to work. So one of the projects that we actually is ongoing now with ISIS is to incorporate PCM into skim coat. Our understanding from HDB market, for example, the skim coat can go up to 6 or 12 mm thick if with a sand content of 60%. So with that, we're able to incorporate the PCM into the skim coat. Now, what is unique about this technology from ISIS is that we're probably the first in the world to use silica to encapsulate. Right now, why is silica important? If you look at this slide, then a polymeric shells result in your concrete cracking because of the different thermal coefficient of expansion. Whereas if you use silica, silica replacing sand, then there's sand replacing sand itself, then you don't see the incidence of the cracks doesn't happen with the silica shells. So this is a project that we thought was very interesting for the industry because you incorporate so many things into it as a system for the buildings. And this whole thing comes about because we spent a lot of, I think close to almost 10 years trying to understand what PCM can or cannot do. So this is something that we've actually developing now. Hopefully by next year, we should have our first scale up with HDB getting a gable wall and trying this product out.
Wow. So thanks for sharing that, Amanda. That is something for us to look forward to. So when you have this system that is put onto your walls, does it mean that you'll just have a cooler house?
Well, if you look at the thermal shield, we can bring the temperature down to by about, let's say, 13 degrees C.
Wow.
And
So no need for air conditioning.
Well, I'm careful to comment on that. But if you look at it, if you look at the bottom of this particular slide, by replacing 12% of the sand with PCM, we are able to get an additional 3.5 degrees C temperature difference. Now, if you just humor me, I'm going to show you this particular slide. This was done in Arizona Public Service Solar Testing Center. If you look at this particular slide, with and without PCM, energy saving can go up to 25% difference, percentage difference. And that, to me, I feel that is a very nice number.
Mm.
So if you are reflecting some of the heat and the residual heat, you're managing it with PCM, then you have a very nice complete system for managing cool buildings.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Amanda. So again, something to look forward to, given that Nippo is working closely with HGB to implement these innovations for a cooler, more sustainable Singapore. Kelvin, what about you? What are some of these technologies that you've been working with? And just perhaps spend time to share about the one that you think has potential to really move the needle and be impactful in Singapore.
Well, we have done quite a number of projects, as you can see in my slides, but if you ask me to choose one, I would say the most impactful one would be on the use of construction waste. On average, every year estimated roughly around 2 million tons of this construction waste is generated, especially when times are good. We have a lot of en blocks. The developers tear down buildings and build new ones. Those days, we have as much as 2 million tons. So this poses issues because first, Singapore being so small, we have limited landfill space. We have only one landfill, which is Semakau landfill. It is an offshore island. And NEA knows that there's a limited lifespan to this island and has been actively promoting recycling of construction waste. But in the past, I would say most of these wastes are largely used for backfilling purposes. So what we did was we wanted to, can we upgrade or upcycle the use of this waste to even use it as a replacement for natural stones that is most commonly used for concrete or even asphalt. So we did a lot of research, and this was done in collaboration with the Building and Construction Authority. So they even give us a grant and to do a project that spans across 3 years. So we did a lot of extensive tests because to use recycled materials in a building, there is always a level of concern whether will this building collapse. So in fact, we demonstrated by building our very own building, which is the Samo Eco-Green building, using up to 100% of recycled concrete to demonstrate that it can be used. So that in a way serve as a testament to convince the authority. So eventually, I would say finally it was accepted by the Building and Construction Authority that it can be used and was currently really incorporated in the specifications. To me, that is one of the most impactful project that we have used. Because based on statistics, if you look at NEA waste statistics, more than 99% of this waste currently has been recycled. So I think that is a major contribution.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kelvin. And I want to applaud your company's leadership and deciding to build your own building and demonstrating that it is safe to use this. Because I think a lot of times, data is data until you build the building and somebody's in it and it's shown to be completely safe. So I applaud your company and you for taking that leadership to show us that this is definitely possible. So we have probably another 15 minutes to the discussion. I just want to turn tack a little bit and talk about the future and talk about emerging trends, new technologies, new solutions, to meet new problems that we're going to face. And I'm going to turn to the academic amongst us, PS. What are you seeing as emerging trends or new challenges that are coming up to make sustainability even more important? And what are some of these solutions that you're observing that could be with us in the next 3 to 5 years? PS.
Okay, so I'll again probably use example of data center cooling. I think the one of the key challenges, right, is actually this trend of increasing rack density. So I think traditionally the data center is actually cooked using air. Air, because it's actually easily or readily available, and the associated infrastructures, whatnot, are actually very well established. But if you think about it, air is actually in fact an insulator. Right? So air is actually not really a very effective heat transfer medium or cooling medium. So now there's actually quite a bit of interest to sort of look into using liquid cooling. And the advantage of actually using such a more aggressive form of cooling techniques is because associated with the more efficient cooling, you can actually effectively lower what we call the junction temperature. But you can basically relate it to chip temperature, for example, your CPU temperature or your NVIDIA GPU temperature. So the key side benefit of the lowering temperature is actually it will actually make the chip a lot more energy efficient. So meaning that not only you're able to boost the performance of your servers or your gaming PC, you're also able to substantially reduce the power consumption. So by one single stroke, you are able to not only improve the efficiency of your cooling system, but you're also able to significantly reduce the power consumption of your IT equipment. But I think traditionally, not many people is actually looking at this because the perception is actually liquid cooling, especially if we are using water, right? There may be like leakage concerns or leakage risk. So to address this, we are now actually working closely with one of the A-star research institute, Simtech, to come up with a hybrid material cold plate. This solution would eliminate all the connectors as well as the hoses inside the server. So in doing so, basically, you will actually eliminate the possibility of leakage if you were to implement liquid cooling solution into your server hardware. So that's an example. Not so much about pushing the performance of liquid cooling per se, but rather the integration, including that with advanced manufacturing techniques that would actually deliver a complete solution that will address some of the implementation concerns or risks that the practitioners are most concerned about. Yeah. So again, I'd like to stress really to push for the adoption of sustainable solutions. Sometimes it's not really about getting the very sophisticated sciences, but rather to work closely with the end user, addressing the pain points. I think that will be actually the most effective ways in pushing for wider adoptions of sustainable solutions.
Okay, and when will we expect for this solution to be available for all the multitude of data centers that we have in Singapore?
So we are currently doing test bedding with one of the world's largest international co-location DC operator, data center operator. So I think it's actually very exciting. I think once the result is ready, we'll be ready to share with the whole industry. Yeah. So I think this is an area which I think Singapore can really take leadership because of our constraint in terms of climatic condition, in terms of the shortage of freshwater resources. In fact, I think this can push us to come up with really innovative solution. Again, not only for our internal consumption, but to export this to across the region to the world. Yeah. So I think that's something that we have to work very closely with the industry in order to really bring it to its full commercialization potential.
Yeah, I'm very happy to hear about that. Another thing that Singapore wants to take leadership in. And so Will, maybe turning to you then, looking at the future for your company and in sustainability in general, what are you observing as some of the new challenges and new solutions for the future?
Yeah, thanks. So I think there's a couple of interesting things happening in our area with smart buildings. And actually, I think a lot of it is adjustments that are being made now with COVID-19. So there's two kind of big things that we're looking at right now. The first is that obviously there's been a big shift to working from home from the traditional working in the office. So For us, we're seeing a lot more interest in home energy management and sort of residential IoT, which is something that we're looking to do more in that area. But the other side of that is that you now have these commercial buildings which were designed for high occupancy, and they, all their equipment is spec'd for a certain load, and they're now operating at part load, pretty much all the time. And that's not an efficient way to operate. And so there's a really interesting opportunity, I think, for vendors and service providers to help these developers and building owners to kind of redesign, recommission their buildings to make them more efficient with this new normal of operation. So a lot of companies are looking at IoT as a tool for that, because it helps you with remote monitoring and management of your facility. There's going to be a huge need for data analytics, AI, all kinds of upgrades, whether it's changing out the plant or adopting new sort of operating conditions and set points. I think there's a lot of interesting changes that are going to happen in that space over the next couple of years.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I'm really glad you talked about COVID. I mean, who could not talk about COVID during this time? I agree with you that life is unusual. It's life unusual. We have new ways of working, new ways of communicating, new ways of sharing information, like this virtual panel that we're on right now. Maybe just to have one other person on the panel share about the effects of COVID to their business or to what they're observing. Would Kelvin or PS or Amanda like to take this? The impact of COVID to your business and how it has affected solutions for sustainability.
Or maybe I can share a bit.
Go ahead.
So with COVID currently, I think its impact is as far as construction industry is concerned, I would say there is quite a significant impact, especially in terms of the manpower, our foreign labor. Currently there is kind of a labor crunch in the sense that those that are overseas workers that have went back before the COVID now couldn't return, and they're currently in the industry, there's kind of a labor shortage. So moving forward, I think we have to reduce our reliance on foreign workers, definitely. But the key challenge is not many locals want to work in the construction industry. So keeping to maintain a small workforce, I think we have to adopt digitalization or to improve productivity. This is one area whereby the authority is trying to provide some incentives for contractors to adopt. So this is one area that COVID, I would say, has given a push for us indirectly to even quickly adopt all these technologies which is available. Thanks.
Yeah, I think so. And we had also heard from BCA that they're really promoting for the construction industry to digitalize, to take on more automation, to use more robots, and to reduce the reliance on manpower. So maybe just to end off our panel today, thank you so much for your insights and for your sharing. Maybe some nuggets and words of wisdom from you to the audience about how they could be implementing more sustainable practices in their businesses or in their personal lives. And maybe I could start the ball rolling with Amanda.
Hi. Well, one of the startup that Nippo incubate is in waste management. And I look at the way, with this labor crunch, not just in the construction industry, but everywhere, what I would like for everybody to pause and think about is the way we manage our waste right now. All of us just throw everything into the bin and expect miracles to happen. I think NEA does a wonderful job. They incinerate almost everything that we throw away. And Sambo is recycling a lot of this waste. One of the projects that A&T, we are looking, the company that we incubate, we're looking to do is to find ways to handle plastic waste. With this COVID, the takeouts, the tapao food created so much plastic waste that this is one area that we hope to be able to bring to the table and find a solution to manage such plastic waste. So yeah, we hope everybody play a part, minimize plastic waste, bring a tingkat, bring a recyclable bag, whatever you do, minimize that. I think that will go a long way helping the country.
Thanks so much, Amanda. What about you, Kelvin? What are your parting words of wisdom to the audience on how to use more innovative solutions to have a more sustainable Singapore?
I think in my personal opinion, resilience is a key word that we must have, in the sense that in all the research that we do, it takes time for to convince the stakeholders. So to me, that is one of the key word that I like to convey. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kelvin. And PS?
Okay, I really like this saying, be the change you wish to see in the world. So if we are really passionate about sustainability, I think just try it, right? So whatever the solution that you can think of, I think just give it a shot. Yeah.
Okay, and Will, final words from you on how we as individuals, as companies, can make a difference.
Sure. So I think this is a little bit of a more general sentiment, but Switch is very focused on technology. I think all the companies and people on this panel are doing great things with technology innovation. But for technology to be impactful, you can't forget about the people, the processes, and all the other things that need to be taken care of to actually make a change successful. So we see this in our industry with sort of old school thinking or procurement processes, or things that stand in the way of actually achieving the change that you want to see. And I think with sustainability, it's all about people, it's all about behavior, it's all about mindset. So those are my parting thoughts.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. I want to thank the panelists for, again, sharing their insights and being so open about the new technologies they're working on. And I will have to agree so much with Will that it's everybody's decision to take on a stance that you want to reduce, recycle, reuse wherever you can, and be mindful about the practices that you have, be it in your own personal capacity or in the workplace. So if there's an opportunity for you in your workplace to be taking on new ways of being more sustainable, go ahead and try to do that. All right, thank you very much, everybody, for participating. And for the audience, thank you again for being part of this panel. I hope that you have enjoyed it as much as I have. Thank you very much.